Hi friends, Richie here, and as usual I've switched on the camera and you know, other than the fact that it's a fine day in late April, there's not much going on, right? One thing that springs to mind, two things. Number one, the mental health system. They're involved in keeping mankind in a very narrow state of consciousness. The other group that I want to talk about is the media. They're involved in exactly the same thing. Yeah, so your thinking, it's affected by the media, you know. They're reinforcing on a daily basis a very, very simplistic idea about life and death. You know, they report from like Sri Lanka, and I thought it was interesting that the death toll in that event, there were you know, various reports, and that's probably because of what I'm on about, which is life and death. It's much more complicated than you know, your typical HBO crime drama would suggest. So yeah, that's the media, right? It's pretty stupid stuff. But the one thing about the media, both here in Ireland and everywhere really, is that all of these supposedly independent news outlets, they all agree on the daily news, you know, more or less. So all of the things that happen globally in one day, each you know, newspaper tends to agree on about half a dozen stories, you know. So that's one thing that we could be suspicious about. Yeah, it's all owned by the same corporations. So yeah, the internet is great, you know. Yeah, YouTube, I mean, Google Gods of Egypt, for instance. You know, I always talk about David Icke. You know, David Icke really hits you over the head with what's going on. And what's going on, I like to say, is for the last 100,000 years, there's been a war. You may not be aware of it. It springs up, you know, in, again, mainstream media. You know, what's going on in Syria, what happened in Iraq. You know, the official line, it's a pretty stupid story, you know. I remember Iraq, it was like weapons of mass destruction. But yeah, you'd have to you know, go into the occult, what's kept hidden, and who knows, I don't personally know what's going on there. But yeah, like Iraq, for instance, there's some talk of a Stargate. The California wildfires, again, there was some talk of alien invasion. And yeah, so I like to say that aliens are trying to take over the world. What are we going to do about it? And who are they? Well, again, there's plenty of information out there. David Icke, what he calls his books, evidence. That's a good one, actually, because there is ample evidence about these guys. You'll find it in folklore. I like to talk about the Tuatha Dé Danann, you know, the Malations, Irish folklore, the Irish round towers. What are the stone circles about? Well, the stone circles, we can cover this because I believe the Matrix, and we live in a Matrix. Yeah, that's the crazy thing that's happening, right? Is that mankind, people like you and me, yeah, we're not in the real world. We're in a construct, very like the film, you know, the Keanu Reeves movie, The Matrix. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, I've lost where I was going with this one. Something to do with the Malations of folklore. And, you know, the story goes that they defeated the Dé Danann. At which point, the Dé Danann, also known as the peoples of the goddess Danu, they were banished underground. Now here we are in 2019, underground, held hostage. So yeah, I like to say that even though we're prisoners, the conditions aren't bad, you know. So there's a lot of fun to be had out there. So yeah, the Malations, they defeated the Dé Danann. So I'm not sure what's going on the surface. And the surface is, as the title suggests, the exit of the Matrix. But yeah, you know, I know people, you know, old people back in ovens. One of them, he says the surface is nearly as bad. So, and I've been there, and conditions appeared to be, I didn't like what I was wearing, you know. Anyway, so yeah, we're prisoners. Who's keeping us hostage? The Irish fairies. Yeah, you have to be careful not to end up underground with the fairies, and so it is in 2019. You know, on the surface, you know, the actual year is 1810. History has been completely whitewashed. I was reading an article about Brian Boru online again, and there was some suspicion that a man of, like, apparently this is about 1,000 years ago, you know, he was 73 when he led his people into battle. But you'd never know, 1,000 years ago lifespans may have been much longer. And yeah, history, that's all been written by the Dracos, you know, so don't trust one bit of that. Yeah, the mental health system, I wanted to talk about that, because yeah, keeping people in a very narrow band of consciousness. If you go to a psychiatrist, right, and bear in mind these guys have been through the college system, so that in itself should set off an alarm, right? Because I'm told that 90% of people that get through college are of the side of the draconians. So right, mainstream history, don't trust it. The mental health system, if you go there and start talking about space aliens, they'll tell you that's a paranoid delusion. You know, these guys, we have to put a stop to them. This war has been going on for over 100,000 years. And, you know, I like to end with the old Fight Club adage. Fights will go on as long as they have to. Chi chi chi. Chi chi I. I chi chi.